producing something and building something from scratch takes a lot of work. It doesn't happen overnight. Trust no one.
Could you talk us through your sword collection?
The only reason I have a sword collection is because of the movies I've done where I had a sword. The first sword I ever had was in The Three Musketeers, and I was too young in the business to ask for it when the movie finished. And then the next movie I did was with a sword was The Hobbit. I have the sword that Bard the Bowman uses in the Battle of the Five Armies. It's his ancestor's sword, Girion's sword, who I also played. And then I have Dracula's sword, which is the most beautiful. Oh. The sword I don't have is The Three Musketeers. So I went online, and it took me about 7 years to find the sword, and it was in a prop auction somewhere in Germany. I bought it for 700 quid.
Looking back on your life, seeing how you've got here, you know, I gave you all of those lists of massive titles you've been in. How odd was it for you looking back on your youth and then this whirlwind career you've been on?
I didn't think I would ever write a memoir. Most people, including lots of people here, would know me from my movies, which is why my introduction is all about my movies. But of course, I came from a very small village in South Wales, and I had a very unusual upbringing. I was in a very religious household. I was bullied really, really badly from as early as I can remember in my school days, all the way through to the day I left school at 16. If I hadn't have been bullied, I probably would have done A-level, but I just had to leave. It was just too painful. And bullying can really affect you, you know. It can affect you as an adult in a really bad way. It can traumatize you, and it can stunt your ambition and your voice and your dreams and your confidence. I used to just tell myself when I was a kid that this was only temporary. I don't know how at 8 or 9 I knew that. This unhappiness, these bullies are only temporary, and when I leave school and I leave home and I get a job, I'll find new friends and I'll do something different with my life. But the story is about hope. It's my journey, and I hope it inspires young people and anyone who reads the book to keep going and to believe in themselves and to be their authentic self and to dream. And I believe if you dream hard enough, things do come true. Maybe not exactly the dream you want, but I think if you really, really are ambitious and strong and be true to yourself, it's the only way one can live, I think. For any Hobbit fans out there, you'll see that there's a slight play on the title of the book, My Unexpected Journey, because The Hobbit was such a humongous part of my life. It was a huge moment. It was a big, big movie for me to be a part of. And I just thought it was a nice little twist on my connection to that movie.
You got the gig in The Hobbit off of one tape.
Yeah, it was crazy. I'd gone on tape with a casting director in London. I didn't hear anything back. I'd completely forgotten about The Hobbit. I'd forgotten about anything to do with The Hobbit. Out of the blue, a phone call came through my agent saying that wanted to fly me to New Zealand to screen test for this character that's about to start filming in a couple of months in The Hobbit. And unfortunately, I couldn't go because I was about to do a movie in New Orleans. And so one of the biggest opportunities in my career so far at that point, I had to say no to, knowing full well that I was going to lose the opportunity to screen test for this giant film. And then Peter called back and said, you know what? We're going to give him the job just from that one audition.
You do some incredible stunts in your career. What stunts jump out at you as being surprisingly difficult to pull off?
All stunts are difficult. There's a lot of rehearsal and consistency. And remember, we all know that, you know, we don't do films in one take. You know, a whole fight sequence may take a day to shoot. So the challenge and the difficulty is not to actually hit the other person. You've got to fake it and make sure you always keep a small distance. It's a lot of pressure, and the stunt days are always very tense. They're very serious. I've done some incredible stunts for Dracula, we used to rehearse every weekend during filming, and I fought like 300 stuntmen in a studio they just filled with dirt, and it was like epic.
When can you think of when people have dressed up as a character of yours? And have you increasingly had people dress up as Gaston and then meet you? What is that like?
It's brilliant. It's an honor. I mean, when I've seen, and trust me, I've seen all of them, from Dracula to Bard the Bowman, Gaston. I mean, people love these characters, and their costumes are great, and it's like make-believe. You are that person, you know, and that wig and the red coat or the bow and arrow. It's just, you enjoy the moment, and I love it. It just makes the whole thing not just about the movie, but about how it affects people, and it brings people together. Like, people make friends at Comic-Con around the world. You know, there's connections that are very deep, and it's how they come together in these conventions around the world, and you get to see familiar faces. And I see lots of my fans at these, and yeah, I love it. It's wonderful.
We've talked about the fans a bit. Do you have a memorable fan interaction that springs to mind?
I remember being in a taxi in London. The taxi driver looks in the mirror. He said, "Hey, you're in the Three Musketeers." And I was like, "Yeah, I was." And then he went quiet. He's like, "Wow, Aramis, right?" I said, "Yeah." And then he started to recite my lines to me. And I was like, "Well, what's that?" And he was like, "These are your lines. This is what you said in the film." And it was a magical moment. It made me very happy, and it touched me to the impression that this character had on this guy. It was very cool.
Can we talk a little bit about your early days? Because 2010 was an incredible year for you. Robin Hood, Clash of the Titans, Tamara Drew, Sex and Drugs and Rock and Roll. And am I right in thinking that Robin Hood was your first time on a movie set full stop? I bet you were wide-eyed the whole time.
Yeah, I had one line. It was, "Won't say his name, demands an audience with a sheriff." And I was the Sheriff of Nottingham's henchman. And the Sheriff of Nottingham was Matthew McFadden, who 3 or 4 years later was one of the Three Musketeers alongside my character,
Lovely.
Which is a very mad thing. And all I had was one line, but they liked me being next to the Sheriff of Nottingham, so they just kept asking me to come back. And I was like, absolutely, I'll come back. It was amazing. I swear I learned to ride a horse for the first time.
Tell us the story of when you first met Emma Thompson on the set of, wait for it, Clash of the Titans.
So anybody who knows Clash of the Titans knows that Emma Thompson was not in Clash of the Titans. And we were shooting it in Shepperton Studios. And next door in Studio 10, they were shooting Nanny McPhee. What we didn't know was that Emma Thompson was very old friends of Liam Neeson, who was playing Zeus. I was his son, Apollo. And one day, just before we broke for lunch, Nanny McPhee turns up on our set in full Nanny McPhee costume and walked up to Zeus's throne and sat on his lap. Nanny McPhee sat on Zeus's lap. It was a very, very surreal moment. Made me remember like how magical this world of make-believe and making movies is. You know, one studio is making Nanny McPhee and the other one is making Clash of the Titans, and there's just a brick wall between us.
Would you consider doing something in the drama field? And if so, what role would you like?
I think if I went back to the stage to do a dramatic piece, a play, I think it would be fun to do something original. I think that's the most fun I think you can have, because you don't have anybody's performance to relate to. You have to originate the character. And I think that's the most fun you can have.
Any advice you can give to people like us trying to succeed in the industry? Like, what's the best thing you can do to better your chances?
It's a TV production company, yes. It's about choosing the content wisely. Producing something and building something from scratch takes a lot of work. And in fact, it takes years to develop something into a place where then you can sell it on the market to a studio or a streamer. It's a lot of work. Spend your money wisely. Trust no one.
Okay.
And be impatient. It doesn't happen overnight.
I've been acting for a little bit, and if you had any advice on how to deal with stage fright?
throwing yourself in the deep end, scaring yourself, approaching your fears and challenging yourself in this industry is the only way you'll progress.
If there are any songs, albums or artists that you associate with certain characters or certain movies?
When I was in The Hobbit, Aidan Turner, he introduced me to a band called Bon Iver. They were playing in the Wellington Town Hall in New Zealand, and I literally heard music which was so atmospheric. It became the soundtrack to my personal experience on The Hobbit. Every time I hear Bon Iver, I think of Wellington, I think of my friends there, and I think of Bard the Bowman.
Being here at Comic-Con and seeing all the amazing costumes, do you think there's any characters that you would like to dress up as or play in the future?
Oh, I wouldn't mind trying on a Jedi outfit.
Hello.
I think that would be fun. Or maybe I wouldn't mind trying on Darth Vader's outfit either. You can get away with a lot because you have a full mask and walk around, and maybe a Teletubby.
This is great.
Maybe I can buy one.
I think we can.
Can you buy them here?
I am going to sort this out for you, Luke. I know people.
Promises, promises.
I'd just like to ask, when you get a call for a role, so you've played Dracula, you've been in The Hobbit, you've played that many variety of roles, how do you prepare to play that person? Because obviously Dracula's different to Gaston. How do you get in that mindset and get to that position where you're happy? Because obviously you want to put 100% into that performance. I'd just like to know how you get to that point.
You know, you try and get inside the head of the character, and each one requires a different set of tools. I do want to put all the effort in as I can, and sometimes you can read a book about something to do with the character or history. There's maybe a historical moment or a novel, or you just Google so many things, and I just keep going until I have enough to flesh out the character.
Would you join the MUC if you was asked?
MCU, I think he means.
Yeah, it depends on the role, I think, but
Who would you like to play?
I really want to do something that pushes the needle. I just don't want to be a part of it to be a part of it. I want a character that does something interesting and is different and unique, and, you know, lots of questions to answer, but I'm not against the idea at all.
The amount of movies have you been? Which ones were one of your favorites, and why?
Well, the big ones are the ones that take the longest, are often the ones that leave a long impression and a mark on you. Of course, things like The Hobbit. Of course, it was almost 10 months of my life. It was a very long time to shoot. Yeah, and some of the other actors were there longer. There's a role that I will forever be associated with for the rest of my life, which is Gaston.
Which one character was your favorite out of all of them?
Let's just say Gaston.
How do you build up the courage to actually do the job?
So telling yourself you can do it, because you can't take your agent to set, you can't take your mum to set, you can't take your best friend to set, you haven't got your mobile phone to read, or you're on your own, right? And so you have to be your own best friend. You have to tell yourself, come on, you can do this. You have to have a positive voice in your head, and it has to be yours that you can do this. You've got to believe in yourself.
When have you been most, okay, take a breath, I can handle this?
I remember being in my first scene with Gandalf, and that was just insane. He had his back to me, and he comes into Dale, and he's like, what's happening here? And I say something like, it was me, and he turns around, and he just, with his hat and the beard, he just went, with a beard, and he just looked me in the eye, and I'm like in my head going, oh my God, it's Gaston, oh my God, I go, what's my line, what's my line, what's my line? It's not just Ian that's famous, but this iconic image of this grey, twisted, pointy hat and the beard, and that was a moment I will never forget. I'm sure I fluffed my lines.
Your first line was Gandalf.
So I was wondering if you're an environmentalist too.
Yes, I am. Yeah, I am an environmentalist. I care very much about my environment, and I'm much about the impact that we make on the environment, close to home and far away. We have to work together, right? When it comes to being conscious of our environment, we all have to care a little bit, and not just care about ourselves, but we have to care about people on the other side of the planet, and I'm glad you do too.
I love your music and your album. I was wondering if you're doing a UK tour anytime soon.
Yeah, I absolutely do. I did have one planned, and then that COVID thing happened and stopped it, which was a shame because it was all ready to go.
Wanted to know if you had any like secret or like weird talents.
Secret weird talents. I can cut hair really, really well. I bite my thumbs, which is a terrible thing. That's just a secret. That's not a talent. That's a terrible habit. I can jump on a trotting horse as it passes me by. I can lean down from a horse and pick something off the floor while it's cantering. I learned to do crazy, weird things. I can disarm an M4 rifle in probably, 20 seconds. I can put it back together in 20 seconds. I can shoot a longbow, which is a 2-meter bow because of The Hobbit.
A massive round of applause, please, for the one and only Luke Evans.